All right, so there's enough of you back. I'm going to start talking. Thank you so much for watching those films. And thank you for being here with us on a Saturday night. There was not much else that you could have been doing given the circumstances. But either way, we're glad you came. And before I hand it off to my moderator, I want to say that all of these films are vastly different from one another, but there's one thing that ties them together, which is that they all embody a story, a perspective, or an experience that was unshared, right? Because we're all out here popping off in public and popping off on Instagram, and we all have those stories that we don't want to share, and we all have those words that we would rather leave unspoken. And as a collective, we think a lot about what we want our impact to be. In a world that is increasingly virtual and hyper real, it is so important to continue to examine the human experience and to try and deepen our understanding of ourselves and get past all the extraneous BS that is thrown at us. And that's what we hope. If you took away anything from this screening tonight, we hope it was inspiration, we hope it was understanding, and we hope that you leave here with, curiosity, something to help you dig deeper into yourself or into your art. So we're gonna head into a Q&A. The best way to view this is to click gallery view. That way you can see all of our beautiful faces. And first I'm gonna have my moderator ask questions to the panelists, but at the end, we're gonna let you guys ask questions. And the way you do that is you drop them in the Q&A. There's a Q&A button down there. So we'll let you know when it's time to do that. And without further ado, I wanna introduce Victoria. She is an actress, a host, a producer, a native of Washington, D.C. She was the producer of Colorblind, the very first film that you saw. And she lives with the belief of being in vibrational alignment with what you want, manifestation. Remember that. And she is this season's event coordinator and fellow Painted Lady. So without further ado, I'm going to hand it off to Victoria.
Woo! Thank you so much, Miranda, for that lovely intro. And if you guys can't tell, this entire screening is actually Miranda's baby. So Unspoken was completely conceptualized by Miranda, using her desire to showcase all of these thought-provoking films from our lovely members. Now, I can honestly say that I'm probably not alone in believing that this screening is probably the most perfect way to introduce our collective. Each of these films were gently crafted by these emerging and gifted young women, many of whom are alumna of DCTV's Directing Fellowship program. So once again, thank you all for sharing this evening with us. And without further ado, let's get to know our ladies. Woo-hoo! All right, so we're gonna go in the order that you saw the films in. So the first film we saw was Colorblind, which is by Piera Hilaire. As a creative Renaissance woman, Piera uses various mediums for interactive storytelling. The next film we saw was Angry from Gabrielle Ayala. Gabrielle is a producer from Far Rockaway, Queens. Her goal is to create content that reflects the audience, covers multiple cultures, and is true to life. She's the co-founder actually, of Mermaid Motion Pictures, and she's our social media and marketing manager. Woohoo! The third film we saw was Miranda's Liminal Spaces. Born and raised in New York, Miranda Sophia is a proud Latina artist. She has spent her life in theater and is now exploring her passion in film. She likes to push the boundaries of the artist and is always looking for fellow creative troublemakers to collaborate with. Number 4, we had What a Rat Understands by Donna Karimi. Donna is a multimedia, New York-based artist that works in multiple forms of storytelling, particularly film and writing. She's recently started a joint project called High Spice in hopes of highlighting Asian artists and creating a community of passionate people about arts in Asian diaspora. Woohoo! Go, Donna. The fifth film we saw was What the Walls Could Hear by Isabella Vargas. Isabella Vargas is a recent graduate of Sarah Lawrence College with a focus on experimental and documentary filmmaking. She's also well-versed in narrative filmmaking. Her work focuses on marginalized and troubled identity while also attempting to give a voice to the oppressed. The sixth, but not least film we saw was Dig Me Out by Imani Karama. Imani is a queer photographer, director, and writer whose work centers around the Black and queer experience and highlights the untold stories of the marginalized. Dig Me Out is her directorial debut. Woohoo! That was awesome. I can honestly say each of those films, we all got something very vastly different. Six completely different point of views about life and what it means to be a woman through our eyes. So we're going to go into some questions. Don't forget, we're going to reserve the last few minutes for you, our audience, to ask whatever questions you may have in the Q&A bar. Okay, so first up is Piera. So Piera's film was Colorblind, and the log line is, after matching with his dream girl on a dating app, John grapples with the reality of the online relationship. In the struggle to find love in this digital age, he must decide if she is too good to be true. So Piera, we all could see that the score was actually one song. So what would you say led you to making your short a music video in place of, dialogues between the characters?
Okay, hey guys, I'm Piera. So actually I heard this song, I think a year before starting my fellowship with DCTV and most of these lovely ladies. I heard this song I think back home in Miami. And then usually I love making films with music. And so when I heard this song, I instantly saw the vision and the visuals that you guys saw and just wanted to have it come to life. And so I had to personally reach out to the artist. His name is Salute. He's a Black producer based in Amsterdam. And after going to Amsterdam, I was able to actually contact him and follow up and get rights to the song and make my first music video. So, yeah.
That's awesome. What would you say was the importance or the significance of exploring online dating?
I think especially now, especially with quarantine, I think dating has become a little bit weird in the sense that we have to use technology just to connect with people even closer. And so I felt like a lot of times we find ourselves maybe getting caught up or playing into a lot of fantasies that are not real. And so wanted to explore that with Colorblind because we've all been there as far as someone may not be who they really are, or we've watched the show Catfish on MTV. So there's a lot of examples of where people have been tricked or even make up someone in their own head, or make up their own fantasy in their own head. And I wanted to showcase that through this film.
Awesome job. Thank you so much, Piera. We're gonna go on to Gabby's Angry. Now, Angry is a visual poem, a type of coming out piece. The logline reads, "The straw that broke the camel's back." So, Gabby, what led you to using old images in your film? Why not something more contemporary? Hello.
Oh,
sorry.
Hi. Sorry. Okay, cool. Yeah, along the lines of breaking the camel's back, I figured the feelings that I was having and the emotions I was experiencing have been reflected for women throughout time. And so it kind of bled in with this feminist historical class I was taking, historical film class, and it kind of came to me that I could mesh archival footage with it, and it would still have a significant meaning to it. Yeah.
Nice, awesome. We will revisit you later. We're gonna move on to our third film, which was Liminal Spaces by Miranda. So Liminal Spaces was about a young woman binge eating and losing her control of her body, falling into a surrealist nightmare. So Miranda, we very rarely hear about the connection between sex, food, and trauma. What led you to linking all three together?
So I've struggled my entire life with an eating disorder, not my entire life, my entire young adult life. You know, from puberty up until about 2 years ago, I'm proud to say that I've nixed it. But in retrospect, I started noticing these weird links between female sexuality and food, particularly sugar, in commercials, in fashion shows. I mean, one image that really inspired this film was the Victoria's Secret fashion show where they're all dressed in candy. And I wanted to make an experimental film that explored this very strange but very insidious connection between food and sex, which after making the film, I realized, at least from a woman's perspective, has to do with how other people perceive you and how you can't control how people perceive you, but also loss of control of your own body.
Yeah. Wow. Wow. Okay. So what do you think surprised you in the making of this film? What surprised you about exploring the subconscious mind?
So yes, that, you know, it started off as like, oh, I want to do something with candy that's really like dark and visceral and erotic. But I ended up, instead of just food and sex, I ended up reading a lot about trauma, um, because I read Roxane Gay's book Hungry, where she talks about how she was gang raped and then developed an eating disorder after that. It's a common thing for women to develop eating disorders after rape and sexual assault and violence. So the film became much more about the unconscious mind and the space between. It ended up being, and that surprised me because I never considered myself to be a very psychological, analytical person, but I learned a lot by making this film.
Awesome. Yeah, it's crazy how it's all connected. The fourth film we saw was What a Rat Understands by Donna. And as you remember it, What a Rat Understands is an old rat recounts his tale of venturing above ground to the human world. Now, I think I can speak for everyone and say that rats are the most hated creatures. So Donna, what led you to trying to humanize rats? Why rats?
Well, I like exploring perspectives we normally wouldn't look at. And I thought that's something a lot of New Yorkers interact with are rats, because we take the subway every day. And you're right, I don't like rats, even though I made a film about rats. And I think not even that, it's kind of Kafkaesque, but not really, in that this rat goes above ground to the human world and kind of interacts with people the way we interact with rats, kind of this vagrant and doesn't fit in, and kind of navigating as a rat in a human world. And it looks at people as human beings, not really the way we connect with each other. And so I thought it would be interesting to give a voice to the rat and kind of use it to critique how people interact with each other and society.
Great job. What was the choice to make the rat an elderly rat as opposed to, I guess, a more younger rat or a rat of our age?
Yeah, I kind of imagine it like a grandfather rat telling this story as a tale of caution to his grandchild. So it's like, beware of humans. This is how they can be. They're selfish, they fight, they live in an abundance of food and they don't really care about it, which is one of the lines the rat said. So I kind of wanted to use that perspective of an older individual kind of passing on its wisdom to a child.
Wow, yeah, I found myself weirdly taking the old rat's advice. Kind of creeped me out. Thank you so much, Donna. Our fifth film was What the Walls Could Hear by Isabella Vargas. This short documentary / experimental film aims to relive and reenact an actual instance of femicide, while also giving a voice to women movements, against femicide occurring throughout Latin America. Isabella could not be here with us. She actually is having issues, connection issues, but I think we all can agree that the images in her film were so powerful. So if you do have questions for her, feel free to leave it in the chat and we will pass it along. And you can continue to follow us on Instagram and we will get those questions answered. Our sixth film was Dig Me Out by Imani. The logline reads, after a series of life setbacks, an aimless young woman, Imani, attempts to put her life back together by pursuing her own version of catharsis, her journal entries. So Imani, what exactly does Dig Me Out mean?
Okay, so the film is inspired by a Slater Kinney.
Can hear you.
So the film is inspired by a Slater Kinney song called Dig Me Out. It's a song that I played on repeat during my small bout of depression a couple of years ago. And Dig Me Out to me, let me back up a little bit. What I love so much about Slater Kinney, especially during that time, was it matched my temperament. I felt so angry and frustrated and stifled and stagnant in the place that I was in. And Dig Me Out is such a visual just phrase and word, and you can feel the urge and the necessity to leave a place that you're in, a place of despondency, and move into a more healthier place. So that's why I named it Dig Me Out.
Nice. And what led you to finally reveal yourself at the very end? We saw little pieces of you leading up into it, but why?
So when deciding on how I wanted to craft and format the film, I knew I wanted a slow progression and a slow reveal. You're hearing this person's voice the entire film and you become familiar with just their voice. But when you finally see my face, you get to see the person you've been listening to and see who this story is about. I like the idea of viewers relating to me relating to the character more on the internal part of her in her story, and then slowly you get to see the face that matches it.
Yes, that was awesome. Everyone was so awesome. So I think now is a good time to jump into our Q&A section. I'm so excited to hear what everyone wants to know. So I peeped earlier, we had a question from a gentleman by the name of Paul Latore. Paul, if you're still here, thank you. His question is, how important as creatives who are women do you think it is to have power over your own stories, as opposed to stories led by the male gaze? And that's for all of you ladies to answer.
Should we go in order, or how do you ladies want to?
Yeah, sure. Maybe raise your hand and I'll pick you. Sure, Miranda.
Yeah, it's extremely important. It's extremely important. And growing up, all the media I watched was produced and written by men. And it's taken, and I'm still unconditioning myself from having received messages about women that didn't come from women.
Yeah, and you can usually tell the difference, I would say, just even watching. You can always spot it out, I feel, watching a story from a woman's perspective, but you can tell, wait a minute, like I feel like a woman would have made a different choice, or would have been a little more careful, or would have considered certain things. To me, it's almost similar to like who cleans the bathroom. It's like, okay, I could tell when a woman cleans the bathroom as opposed to when a man may clean the bathroom. I don't know.
That's fair. I think of when it comes to, people say like art is a reflection of history, right? And I feel like our only reference of history is through the male gaze. And so the only form of history we know and we've grown up learning is the patriarchal history. And so I feel like there's actually, when we started this collective, one of the inspirations was from the Guerrilla Girls. They're an artist group from the 80s that started in the 80s, and they're all about women artists like actually trying to be more widely represented within the art industry. And so I think when it comes to creating our own stories, it's important that we share our perspectives, because you don't know what you don't see. And so the more that we're actually actively creating and cultivating our stories together, I think the more people can see where we're coming from.
Nice. Anyone else? Would anyone else like to answer? Yeah? Okay, I think we can move on to our second question. So Marlon J writes, internal struggles were the common thread I felt between all films. Has a film helped any of you with inner struggles? And has it influenced your projects thus far?
I'll jump in.
Yeah.
I know for me, this piece was a poem taken from a friend, but I felt that it related so much to where I was at during that like time, that it really just spoke to this anger that I didn't know that I had, if that makes sense. And it like pinpointed different things that were making me angry. And so I think that's why I chose this piece. And, you know, as Victoria mentioned in the little bio, I almost view this as a coming out story for me, for my family. And so in that, it shed its own layers in its creation, and the words carried a little heavier. So yeah, definitely learned a lot from that. And I definitely, it's definitely influenced my work since then. I think that in the new work that I am creating, my characters are referencing those layers, or at least I'm creating layers that hit certain emotions for them that I don't think I would have acknowledged before, if that makes any sense. But yeah, definitely a journey with this piece.
Nice. Anyone else? Yeah, Imani?
Okay. Yeah. Could you actually repeat the question one more time, just so?
Sure. Yes. So Marlon writes that internal struggles were a common thread. Has a film helped you with any struggles, and has it influenced your projects thus far?
Oh, for sure. I know just with this piece that you all saw tonight, during the production, it was weird. The second layer of catharsis I went through just making it, reliving experiences, revisiting the moments, and then translating it into a film and capturing it in real time. You realize, oh, I didn't handle that situation just as bad as I thought, and you get to step away from the painting a few steps back, and you really get to look at it with hindsight 2020. So for sure, it's definitely something. It's going to be a through line in all of my future pieces. For sure.
Yeah, I feel like when we write or when we create like biographical pieces, like when we go back, even that is healing, because then, like you said, we realize, oh wow, I thought I was depressed all year when it was really only 2 months, and you can recognize like how far you have come and how much you've actually grown and evolved when you revisit some of your own work. Great. Let's move on to another question. Ooh, this one is for Gabrielle. As a Black filmmaker, how important is reclaiming the angry woman trope for you?
Very important. And this piece, when creating it, I had to decide on whether it was worth keeping all the anger in it, knowing that some people would misinterpret it. And I decided that it was worth it, that part of the power of the piece is the fact that the speaker, the poet, the character is identifying that she is fitting some of these stereotypes, and that just makes her more angry. That the fact that people can put a stereotype on her, and just the fact that she so happens to fit it, that they could then run and define her in other areas. And so the poem was actually written and spoken live, very angry. And the speaker is actually in the poem, actually is the writer of the poem. And so we spoke about it, and we said, for this piece, I think the anger and the tone would be too distracting from the visuals, and it would hold more weight if it was spoken, not softer, but more gentle and more spaced out. And I think it does. It helps a lot of viewers not just hear the words and say yes, 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 I agree, I'm angry about that, but almost like reflect on the opposite side and how that would look for someone who is seeing the person being angry, if that makes sense. So not only to relate to the anger, but be able to step into the shoes of someone that they come across voicing anger in the same type of manner, the same recognition of these emotional stereotypes, these historical confines that women have been placed in. Queer women, um, women of color, they can all relate, I think, to this.
Yeah, I appreciate what you said. Sorry, are you? I don't know. You okay? I appreciate what you said about like fitting into that stereotype, because honestly, it is frustrating to hear like the word stereotype, because to me it sounds like a blanketed like, all right, this is what I think, and I'm gonna move on. But it's like, okay, oh yeah, okay, maybe I am fitting this stereotype, but can you listen to me for a second? Like, can you please try to like humanize and relate to what I'm saying and how I'm feeling? Like, all right, like, hear me out for a second. All right, so we're gonna move on to the next question. The next question is by Stephanie. What's your journey forming this collective so far? How do you see yourselves progressing? Ooh, that's a good one, Stephanie. Who would like to answer that?
I feel like it's a team question. I think.
Well, how about you, Miss President?
Well, I think it's been an interesting journey. I think we all try to like actually meet in person when we first started. So like 2020 January, we were all excited about like renting spaces, meeting in person, doing workshops, and then realizing in the light of COVID that we had to get like kind of creative with how we're connecting with each other and how we're gonna, of course, connect, like give back to the community from a creative standpoint. And so I think it's been interesting and fun doing it virtually. We've been doing Zooms, we've been, calling each other and been like, I feel like we've been communicating better now that, we kind of have to, now that we have programs to create together, I think we've communicated better virtually than we were able to before. Because I feel like in New York, you're used to running around and getting caught up in so many other things. I think now that we're able to focus on this collective of the team, I think it's made the journey like a little bit better together, I personally think. And then I feel like, how do we see ourselves progressing? We ideally want to start raising funds so that we can actually do more programs like this regularly. So there'll be like kind of like career development workshops for people, programs that involve like just also like project development. So like, of course, helping you in your career in media, but then also if you want to make something, we're gonna, put our money where our mouth is as well and help you fund that project. So I think it's twofold, but hopefully we do these on a regular basis, and that's kind of the next step. But if anyone else wants to answer.
Yeah, I think I wanted to say something about that. And I think that, a lot of this is DIY, and it was in part inspired by our teacher and mentor that a lot of us had during our DCTV fellowship. And, I remember, I think it was March 2 years ago, we went to a festival that they put on, and I just thought like, wow, look at how they work, look at how meaningful, their work is, look at how many people are affected by it. And so I really was kind of enamored by this idea. Wow, a collective is so much better than like going to work for a big company. Like, I can keep this status as an independent filmmaker. I can, rely on these other creative women. And I think, it's just gone so well in that, you know, we're all serious about really making this work, and it really shows. And I think apart from this, this has taught me you don't have to wait for someone to give you an opportunity. You can create these opportunities for yourself. So it's really inspired other projects that I'm working on right now.
Awesome. Well said, ladies. We're going to move on to our next question. Lisa says, wow, I'm so impressed by all of your stories. What stories are you hoping to tell next?
Gabby.
Okay, I'll speak to that. Currently, I am working on a short about a young adolescent who is coming into her womanhood and also facing bullies, and also just navigating her identity as a black young child. And so she ultimately gets pressured into cutting her pubes, and so it is another piece that speaks to the internal, what she's going to be going through during that, and the lessons that but in terms of the question, I think I want to speak more about those unspoken, like stories and tales from these perspectives of females that we don't see. They aren't touched in mainstream cinema, and so no one will be talking about an 11-year-old girl going through these issues, but there is that 11-year-old going through those issues, and so I think that is our next project as a collective, and I am excited to be running that and working on that project. Yeah.
Great, thank you. We have a lot of awesome questions. I want to make sure I get I want to make sure I can we can fill you all's heads correctly. Okay, Colette asks, all of these films have such a strong perspective. I would love to know what everyone's thoughts are on the role of a filmmaker or artist. Is your process exploratory, message-driven, both, or neither? Anyone can jump in to answer that.
I'll answer that one. And I do believe in films that have a strong message, particularly if the filmmaker is a person from a marginalized and disenfranchised community. I firmly support those films. Myself as a filmmaker, I'm not too interested in proving a point, sending a message, or sermonizing. I just like to push the limits of the form, not just with film, but with art in general, theater, writing. There's, especially in mainstream, when we're watching mainstream movies and TV, there's like a very clear structure. And I want to know, how far can I push that? With the film you saw, Liminal Spaces, one of the things I wanted to push was color and sounds. Like, how far can I push that? Maybe that will change in my future, but for now, that's my goal, is to see like just how much I can expand the boundaries and the confines of what art is supposed to be.
Well said. Does anyone else want to jump in?
Yeah, I'll just say one thing. I like what Miranda said about like pushing the limits, and I think with a rat film, what I tend to do, I notice when I make films, is I usually do what I like to do. I don't really have a message I'm trying to push out. It's something that's fun for me, and usually I'll laugh while I'm making it. And so with rat film, I really wanted to explore different mediums like stop motion and animation, and kind of integrate the two and play around with perspective. So I noticed that I tend to get very crafty with my work. It's not intentional, but it's like, how can I take something ordinary like a rat, I'm not going to use a live rat, and make that accessible to viewers and kind of humanize that element of the rat.
Thank you, thank you. Okay, we're gonna move on to another question. So we cannot ignore the elephant in the room, COVID. So Paul asks, where do we see filmmaking going in the post-COVID or COVID coping world? Do you feel intimate films such as these will become more prevalent?
I'll speak to that. I think it's a little bit of a two-parter. One, yes, I do think more filmmakers and directors and writers will be taking part in their own films. But also, and I could testify a little bit to this because I took the training just this week. But it's called the COVID compliance officer, and it's a new role that every single set has to have. And depending on how many people you have on your set, you have to have a certain amount of officers. And there's certain guidelines and paperwork that have to be met every single day. And so even on short sets, you're gonna have to have some kind of COVID compliance officer. What will that look like in terms of content? I think it could be a mixed bag. Recently I saw, I think it was a Walmart commercial, and the kids in the commercial were like getting ready for school or shopping at Walmart, and they all had masks, and it was very weird to watch, like as if it's not us all the time. But I think it's going to be a mixed bag. I think some of the content will shed light on the reality, and I think some of the content will try to preserve that idea, that cinematic idea that COVID's not happening, especially for certain genres. You know, I think it'll be weird. You know, you can't really watch a horror film with a mask, but I think it's gonna be a mixed bag.
I agree, but it's tough though. I feel like it's almost inevitable. Like, unless it's a period piece, are we gonna? I feel like, are we just gonna sit here and lie and pretend like, you know, there hasn't been a shift in our day-to-day, you know, going about? Like, no, either it's gonna be a period piece and it never happened, or we're just gonna have to adjust. It's gonna have to be in the content. So we kind of answered two questions in one with that. Our next question is, how does the Black Lives Matter demonstrations influence our creative work?
I guess I'll speak to that.
Yeah.
I think for a lot of people, it's though this is all a tragedy, and though this has been happening for literally generations, I think this basically a bubble that has allowed people the courage to stand for something that they know is going to be controversial. I think because of that courage, and because of that that idea of calling out and cancel culture and all of this stuff, I think it's gonna force a lot of people who don't necessarily pick a side to pick a side. Because if you're not picking a side, you're on the wrong side. You're not picking a side. And so I think this whole time has really forced a lot of reflection, not just on health, not just on politics, not just on science, but on identity when it's not comfortable, you know, and not just for our Black brothers and sisters, but for, you know, white passing, for Asians, for Hispanics, for Latinas, for literally anyone. It's calling you out, and as an individual, you then have the opportunity to pick a side, and as an artist, you have the opportunity to express and to encourage and to inspire using that side that you pick. And I think I think people are going to be forced to do it, but I also think that if you bypass it, it's a shame. I think it would be an opportunity lost.
Mm-hmm. Agreed. I also feel like because it's such a I don't know the proper term, but because it's such a like an acronym now, you know, you're either going to get one or two responses. Either you're going to get the attention that people are like glued in because they support it, or you're just gonna get people that are just like, oh, that's so much, I don't even want to do. So I feel like it's polarizing either way. All right, let's move on to our next question. This one's for Imani. Imani, how do you feel mental illness and queerness intersect, not only in film, but in life?
Ooh, we're going with the
Heavy, yeah, that was great.
Let me take a stab at that. So, I know just with my film, I'm going to speak first about my film and I'll speak more generally after. But with the piece that I made, I know it was about coming out, and I know during that time with me, let's just say in the closet, my mental health was at risk, and I definitely had a lot of stuff that I was keeping in and a lot of internal issues I wasn't addressing that bubbled to the surface. I just know generally with mental health and queerness, it all intersects, you know? As a Black woman, a queer Black woman, racism, sexism, you have also, you know, dealing with your mental health, they all intersect and they're all issues that need to be addressed at the same time. I'm sorry, I feel like I'm rambling. This is a heavy hitter, and I feel like I might not be the person to have the solution for you. But what I will say is when you are living within the margins, it can be a detriment to your health. And
Yeah, no, I think you're right on the money with it. I think it intersects as far as anytime there's something that you are repressing, it spills into other parts of your expression. So it makes it difficult to be your complete self because maybe you're working so hard to deny something, or you're not ready to explore something. I think it can almost speak for just generally anything that you're trying to repress. It's all connected. And I think even when I think back into Miranda's film, how she connected sex with, binge eating. It's, pardon, I live uptown. They like to party. But yeah, back to Miranda's film, I think it's all very much connected. I know when I'm feeling sad, I want comfort. So I rush to like fluffy types of foods that happen to be like in the croissant and donut and pizza, area of food. So it's all really connected.
Amani, how did you feel when you first screened the film or like released the film to that?
how did I feel? Well, you all know, nervous, obviously, but a huge relief, a real weight off of my shoulders. I felt more visible, accepted, and that was also my first time coming out to my family as well. And back to the mental illness thing, without even knowing it, my mental health improved. I'm not going to say drastically, but slightly, just by being more comfortable with who I am and being more confident and with my walking the walk, talking the talk, But yeah, definitely nervous, all the things, all the feels.
Woohoo! Well, thank you. Thank you. Any improvement is a major improvement. So give yourself some credit, girl. All right, we're gonna move on to another question. This question's for Miranda. So Miranda, how did family and friends approach your film? Being that you have such strong scenes, especially in the nude.
This is my favorite question, and I get it every time I screen this film. What I'm gonna say is growing up I was surrounded by images of naked women. I was taught from day one that my sex appeal was the most important thing about myself, especially as a Latina woman. That trope has affected me in so many ways. And now with social media and influencers, women are literally using their own pictures to make money. So my I'm very comfortable with being naked, like, on, it's just something some women are uncomfortable, but I, like, because of the conditioning I've received, have been taught that, like, that is how you gain approval. Like, that is your biggest asset as an artist, as an entrepreneur, as anything. And so making this film, I'm taking that back. Like, if other people can have naked images of women and they're going to be okay, then I can do it too. And in terms of my friends and family, I'm very outspoken about my belief that I have the right to dress and present myself however I want. So friends and family, they I don't think they were too surprised, but definitely I'm selective with I'm starting to be a little bit more selective about who I share my work with, because some people just flat out don't understand it. And these are not the type of people that are open to, like, if I explain it to them, they're going to think differently. And the way I see it is, I want the open-minded audience. I want the audience that's going to question it, but then want to hear what I have to say about it. Someone who would be, like, scandalized by that, or, like, judge me or think down after seeing that, then, like, there's no room for you in my life anyway.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, those that are supposed to get it will. So that's just kind of where you gotta leave it. The next question we have, is from Anna. Are there any filmmakers, writers, directors who any of you align with, or who you feel more accurately express the female experience through their art that the rest of us should be checking out? Other than ourselves?
I could say a few. So I'll just throw one out there, but one person I've loved since the beginning is Issa Rae, being kind of literally starting from like YouTube and then going off to like, get a budget and working with HBO and having her own show and now movie. So I feel like that's a Black woman director, filmmaker in general that that I'm inspired by, and that I like. I think everyone should check out because she's coming out with new stuff like every season. So
yeah. While you're there, Pierre, we actually have a question for you. Okay. So Esther says, your film told, actually she asks, is your film told from the perspective of the male? If so, how doesn't it make the story different than told from a woman's perspective? I think what she's asking is, was this story told by the male? That's how does it? Yeah.
That's a very good question, Esther. I think for me, it was more like a bird's eye view, like third person, I think is usually the way I like to narrate. And so when thinking about the film, I wasn't sure if I wanted to make the woman the main character or make the woman like the person going through those motions of like finding love online. But I think it's more so rooted in like the Black experience. And then having the love interest be a woman, an extension of that, because I wanted her to be represented as far as like a fantasy, because I feel like that's kind of a lot of times how we're being played up. Like a lot of people think that, we're supposed to be a certain way, but actually we're like what you think of us isn't what we really are. And so I kind of wanted to like showcase how the female's character is kind of shown that way, if that makes sense. But yeah, it's more of like a third person, I would say.
Nice. So I know we're gonna have to wrap up soon, and we have so many more questions. Let me see how I can, a few of your questions kind of coincide. I would say the general consensus is most people want to know what we're doing next and how has this, what challenges we have faced in our films, what have the fears been, and then how has this collaboration inspired our next or our future work.
I think Gabby was getting at one of our like next. I think our next round is to like focus on projects and actually making films. So being women who actually talk about what we want to do, but then actually making it. And so I'll pass it over to Gabby to speak to that. But that's kind of like the next step.
Yeah, I think a huge part of building a collective is just a collective part first. So just being able to have this free space, this creative space where there is no judgment, there is no, oh, we might not have the budget for that. Oh, that's too, we might not have an audience for that. Where we just have an open floor where we can express anything that we're creatively feeling, creatively want to pursue, and get a consensus on how to pursue that, how to next, how to plan for that next. And I think in making this collective, a first part of a lot of our meetings was literally just a venting session, and just this time is trying for everyone, just being able to and talk freely with other people, was a huge part. We would spend hours just talking about how we were feeling, just our mental health, and what we wanted to do next creatively during this time. And I think from that stems that collaboration that comes with a collective. And I think they have to go hand in hand. And then I think, like Piera said, the next part of this will be to create original content, to use those sessions, those workshops, those brainstorms, brainstorming sessions, and then now implement those steps that we talked about and we planned through, and break apart those roles that best fit us as members, where we can go. Who will be better fit for a producer for this, and who will be really good as a scripty or an actor or whatever have you. And then I think yeah, the goal from now on will be to produce some kind of media, some kind of original content every creative season. And I think we'll break it up the year into about like semesters. So the hope is to have 2 finished original projects by the end of each, say, academic year. But yeah, I think that's the goal, to continue to support one another creatively, and provide that space, that talk back space, to really flesh out ideas and really get different themes, and powerful things and powerful stories, narratives out, and then make them happen.
Yeah.
Adding to Gabby's point, I do want to add before we wrap up that as we're progressing as a collective, we are open to collaborations. Now that we're in that phase, and we're also open to like potential membership. So if there's any inquiries about that, we're more than welcome to take those and to speak to you guys. But this is a collective that represents women and all the intersections of women. And so it's kind of for us, for women, and wanted to make that a point because we do want to support each other. And as a collective.
Well said, ladies. Now, thank you guys so much for all the lovely questions. I'm gonna pass the mic back to Miranda for a brief poll.
I want to thank you all so much for coming tonight. It meant the world to us. We are all smiles right now. We've been communicating with each other via our own chat, and we're all like, I'm sorry we didn't get to answer all of your questions. We're running short on time. What I want to ask you guys, and if there's any follow-ups, we're going to leave our contact info. We're going to put a little place card with our contact info right here. But right now, what would really help us is we want to gauge how easy it was for you to access this event, how much you enjoyed it, or if you really hated it. We want to know that too. So we're going to drop a poll. All you have to do is read the question and click on the answer and that's it. And that would really help us so much collect data about our event. But once again, thank you. And if any of you want to collaborate, let us know, and we hope to see you back again soon.